Hello, America and around the world. This is Chairidee Smith. I am Miss Mogul, and today is all about Mogul Talk. We are mindset media for today's leaders, and you are in for a treat for today's show. Before I get into today's guest, I want to tell you about our show and who we're sponsored by. Today, we are brought to you by Mogul U Real Estate Academy. If you are ready to launch your real estate career, create sustainable wealth, and then bring the family along for the ride, I strongly encourage you to get enrolled in our self-paced, user-friendly courses. For more information on that, make sure you go to mommiescreatingeconomies.com and you can enroll in classes today. Secondly, we are bringing this show to you by, of course, TLC. TLC is a health food organization that I've had the privilege of working with, created many, many millionaires around the world, and it is all about health and wealth, not just for the body, but for the mind and for your economics. If you want more information on that, make sure you go to my Facebook page, look in the bio, scroll down, and you'll find that link there. And listen, try it out. We'd love to see what you think about the products and bring you into the organization. Lastly, the Mogul Method. Now, this is a mastermind that I'll be hosting in May. And listen, I've had the privilege to be mentored by leaders like Jeff Hoffman, James Dentley, Kevin Harrington of Shark Tank. And what I've done is really kind of curated all of the information that I've learned from these leaders and created a mastermind. So if you are ready to take your business culture, your business team to the next level and beyond, I invite you to go ahead and get enrolled in that. You can get more information on that at youcancreateyourown.economy.com. Now, I am excited about today's guest and leader. I had the opportunity to meet this guest when I was the public policy director for Houston's NABO, National Association of Women Business Owners. She brought a presentation to us and made an indelible impact on us as leaders here in the market, the Houston market. And I am really ready to bring her into the studio, and I want you to hear her thoughts on leadership. But before I bring her in, let me tell you about this wonderful guest. For over 20 years, Shantara Chatman, the founder of the Chatman Women's Foundation and president of PowHer Consulting, has become a successful global cultural strategist and community leader in Fortune 500 companies and in the private sector. Shantara focuses on culture curation and building strong allies in the workplace. You're really going to need to know about that. She weaves her experiences into her powerful stories and interactive conversations that make her a highly sought out after speaker, consultant, and lecturer. Her thought leadership has been featured in various online platforms, Houston Business Journal, and Inc. magazine. Without further ado, I am so excited to have in the studio with me today the one and the only Shantara Chatman. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been excited all week for this conversation. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
I knew, and I say this often, but it takes on a different meaning with you. I've followed your career since our introduction at NABO. And I've seen the wonderful things you've done with women in leadership, not just here stateside, but really you have a global reach. And I've watched how you've matriculated through women's leadership, women's empowerment, bringing the best of us together and then excavating the best out of us in your consulting, in your teachings. So it's a real treat to have you in the studio today, and I'm excited for our listeners to really hear. We have a listening audience, Shantara, literally around the world. Over 8 million people in the network who listen to our shows. We have listeners in the UK, Nigeria, Israel, Ethiopia, of course, here in the US. And so what I'm hoping is happening right now is that they're all sitting around their laptop with their latte, as I always tell them, and take notes, because today they're going to hear a prolific leader talk to us about leadership. So enough of me gushing on you, because that could go on for a while. Tell us a little bit about you and how you started your journey in leadership. Who are you?
So I started out in consulting. I graduated from Texas A&M University, so
Come
I'm an
on.
Aggie.
Come
I'm
on,
an
Aggie.
Aggie.
We don't hold it against you.
Please don't, because I love me some Texas
I
A&M.
know. I know.
So I graduated from Texas A&M, and I became a consultant. I was like, hey, I'm about to go and do this consulting thing. I am going to be the best leader I can be. So for almost 20 years, I worked in the consulting field, and I'm here in Houston, Texas. So I was a consultant for 13 years for NASA.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that was, huge for me. And then I moved on to be a consultant and worked in the oil and gas industry before I stepped out on my own and started my own consulting firm, PowHer Consulting. But during all of that time, I've had for almost 14 years, I founded and became the executive director of the Chatman Women's Foundation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So with, the part of me that always wanted to be a leader, there was also a part of me that always said, I also want to help women.
Mm-hmm.
I want to help women be the best them they can be, regardless of if they wanted to climb the ladder or if they just wanted to be the best, homemaker, the best mom, whatever those goals are. I want to be able to say, I want to be able to help you. I want to do that for you, whatever that looks like.
So what was the genesis of that? I know that you say that it started with Texas A&M, and after graduating from A&M, you went right into consulting. But there's usually a story, right, where you kind of find your calling, even though you may not have launched into it yet. There's this event that happens that says, yep, that's my life's journey. That's the direction I'm going in. Did you have one of those moments?
I did. In my consulting firm,
Okay.
Big corporations always look for somewhere to spend their money, right? And they were saying, hey, we want to be able to work in the community. Shantira, can you find us something to do? A place to work. And there was a women's shelter not far from my office that we started to, do little things with and, do holiday parties and find ways to give them things during the holidays. But I felt like that wasn't enough. So I called them on my own and said, is there something I can do? So I started going on Tuesday nights and teaching assertiveness.
Isn't that the hallmark of a leader, though? Isn't that the hallmark? There is always this, can I do more? Is there something else I can do? Once we find, okay, yeah, this is the corporate confine, but when you really have a calling and a passion, it normally leads you to that above and beyond call of duty. And that's where I find the best leaders are kind of created in this crucible of service, right? When the cameras aren't on and when no one's looking, how can I give? How can I do more? And we put our hands to the plow and we get in there. How in the world, though, that experience of teaching assertiveness at all places, a women's shelter where it seems to be void, right? That's not normally a characteristic of a women's shelter. So my question to you is, why assertiveness? Why there? And how did it lead you into your life's work?
Well, what the ladies at the shelter felt like assertiveness would do for them is, one, teach them how to get back into a normal life. They needed to learn how to, one, get a job again, because some of these ladies were, displaced.
Sure.
And it was like, hey, they need to learn how to assert themselves. They need to learn how to shake hands. They need to learn how to look men in the eye again.
Come on.
And
That's
so
so
you have to be stronger. And so I was like, I can do that. I can teach them how to look somebody in the eye. I can teach them how to be bold and strong. If I can't do that, that's what I can do.
Come on.
So I would literally stand there and have staring contests with these women.
No, you didn't. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Okay.
And I knew that I was doing something right when a lady came to me crying.
Yes.
And she said, I got a job because of you. And I was like, no, you got a job because of you. She says, no, wait a minute. Let me tell you why I know it was because of you. Because the guy told me he gave me the job because I had the best eye contact.
Wow.
He told me I came in there, shook his hand, and looked him dead in his eye. And I'd get my whole interview staring him in his eye.
Wonderful.
And that wouldn't have happened if you would have not stared at me for 20 minutes.
Wow.
In a session. So I knew that worked. And those ladies actually encouraged me to start the Women's Foundation.
Wow.
They told me that they were telling their friends about me, but their friends could not come to the shelter, because in a shelter, you can't invite strangers into the shelter.
Sure.
So they were like, you should do something outside of this. You should maybe create something. And it started as a women's conference, and that morphed into the foundation.
Love that. It always goes so far beyond kind of the checklist of what a leader looks like. True leadership is really about making indelible impacts on people's lives, and who knows how far it goes from there. You have been very fortunate to have your foothold in what's called male-dominated industries, with oil and gas, NASA, some of the largest corporations, and those are the largest economies here in the Houston market, by the way. We are oil and gas. We are the medical center. We are NASA. Those are the hallmarks of our economy, and you've had your foothold there. Talk to me about now diversity and inclusion. We know that you're a curator of corporate culture, and we can certainly see now how you weave your special way of training, right, in the everyday nuts and bolts of what it takes to create a company culture. But when you think about diversity and inclusion,
right,
they seem to be on polar opposite ends of the spectrum. Talk to me about what you do in the space of diversity, okay, and inclusion, and how you help leaders curate the kind of culture that breeds success and cooperation.
So in the spaces that I've worked in, as you mentioned, they've been male-dominated spaces. And honestly, when I started working at NASA, I was one of the youngest. I started working there when I was 23 years old. And in 1999, I couldn't even rent a car at 23 years old.
Wow.
So I was like everybody's little baby, right? Everybody was like, "Oh, look at her, ain't she?"
They had no idea, though, right? They had no idea. But that's another story. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's for another interview, another podcast. But I also found myself, because I was this young person, this new thing. I found myself breaking barriers that I didn't know I was going to have to break. And I found myself in racial spaces that I didn't know I was going to be in.
Now, but stick a pin there, because I think this is a poignant moment. You're breaking barriers from a generational standpoint, from a sex standpoint, from a cultural standpoint. Talk to young leaders, though. We're going to get into your experience, but that's a wonderful moment to really speak to young leaders. How did you navigate through that as a young woman of color, a young African American woman in a male-dominated industry, navigate that? What was the skill set? What was the mindset that helped you to thrive in that kind of environment? Because let's be honest, that could be a make and break situation if you're not equipped.
Exactly. And I was just talking about this with my mom like 2 days ago, because it broke a lot of young people that came in with me. A lot of people left. A lot of young women left. And I would say the one thing that kept me there, one was I wanted it.
Come on.
I wanted it. I felt like there was one thing that I wanted to do, which was to break the generational wealth gap that came through my family. And that was driving me. That drove me to get out of Texas A&M. And that was driving me to move forward at, NASA and all of the other places where I was going. And I was like, I'm going to move forward here. I felt like I was just going to do it. I also felt like I needed to use my voice.
Oh, that's good.
I wanted to be heard. And I had one leader, one manager, that he didn't know he was doing it, but he was pushing me. He was like, Chandera, if you want to know something, ask the question. Ask it in the meeting. Don't wait till the meeting's over. That's how professionals do it. He was just kind of pushing me, because I would wait till meetings were over and then go and ask him every question that everything I didn't know. He was like, no, ask it in the meeting. Let them hear you. Don't wait. You want your voice in the room.
And so how profound is that for today's young millennial or Gen Z? I have a daughter who is graduating in just a little while from Howard University, STEM major, African American woman, mechanical engineering, and there aren't very many people at all who look like her, come with her background and her. How important is it as a young woman of color to have the profound, audacious gall to use your voice because let's be honest again, and we're going to get to a commercial break here in a minute, but I really want you to dig into this one because I feel like it's so needed for young women like that who are bright who was it? Young, gifted, and black.
Yeah.
In these environments, you bring a culture, a history with you, but also an acumen and a brilliance. How do you show up as a total full package, not denying any aspect of yourself in that environment? How do you do that?
You do it unapologetically.
That's
and
good.
they're going to want you to be apologetic about you. And when I'm telling you, I had bosses put in my performance review that I was too strong.
Go figure.
When I tell you I was dinged in my performance review because my voice was too deep, I was told that I walked in the room like I owned the place. That literally was in a performance review.
Okay.
And I actually, my response was, that's intentional. I said, thank you.
That's so good.
That makes sense to me. That's what I want to happen.
So here's a good place to take a break. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but you know what that tells me? You were never meant to be confined in those limitations. It was time for you to break the box, break the barrier, and launch out. So we're going to take this quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to dig more into that whole voice, right? The voice of the leader. How do we break the status quo using our voice? We'll be right back. Welcome to Mogul, the place where business, lifestyle, and possibilities collide. Hello, my name is Chairidee Smith. I'm Miss Mogul. I'm a business leader, global speaker, trusted economic development strategist, media personality, author, advocate, and lioness mom. We're taking you next door and around the world, conversing with business leaders about the news of the day, emerging business trends, and introducing your family to possibilities that will help you live life to its fullest. Listen, we're really excited about our special interest stories where we connect you with authentic faith, spirituality, and abundant thinking. Tune in right here, streaming live on this platform or on a mobile device near you. And listen, don't forget to subscribe to this show and discover the mogul in you. We're excited to connect with you, and we'll see you streaming live right here. Welcome to We're back. Now, before we went to break, Chantera, we were digging in to the whole notion of being gifted and talented and brilliant and strong and capable and whole in environments that are male dominated and typically have not been nurturing to our kind of genius, courage, brilliance, etc. And you were talking to us about some of the things you were dinged for, if you can believe that, in your performance review, showing up as if you own the room. Don't we tell our children and our daughters, especially our sons, show up like that? And then too strong, to this, to that. And the statement I made in that segment is that was the best litmus test for you to know it was time now to launch into your own sphere of influence. Talk to me about being a Black woman, an African-American woman in a male-dominated, unequal playing field arena. How in the world did you negotiate that? We talked a little bit about you as a young woman, but now that we're getting some years and some seasoning on us, as I like to say, right? Come on, we're seasoning the years. How do you now matriculate through, okay, post Me Too, post social unrest that we experienced in 2020. But let's be honest, this has been our historic narrative, Historically, this has been our narrative, right? How have you negotiated those situations and navigated your way through those particular situations?
It's been kind of a roller coaster for me because
Talk to us about it.
when I left NASA, I thought I'm good. I went through all of that. I made it through what I needed to. I would go work, do some, consulting work in oil and gas. It could, nothing can be as crazy as that.
You think?
But what I realized is corporate America is corporate America.
Yes.
And so I needed to learn that. I needed to learn that, it's still the game. And you still have to keep your eyes open, regardless of the industry that you're in. And you can't let your guard down. And the mistake I made, and I own up to it constantly, is I let my guard down. I thought, I got a little comfortable in another corporate environment where I thought, okay, these folks, they got my back. But they had my back to the point where all of a sudden I was getting too strong.
So was there a specific incident that happened there?
Oh, yes, ma'am, a specific incident where, at one point, I was told, in my NASA career, it was your voice is too much, right? It was your voice is too strong. You walk in the room like you own your place, or like you own the place. When I moved into a different industry, I was told your look is too dangerous. There's no way we will send you over and work with our client. That's too dangerous for us. You need to sit over here and be in the corner. And when I say that was literally what I was told, that was literally what I was told.
Okay. So sitting in that, what is the mental talk you give yourself?
Yes.
Come on, because it's a skill, right? This is a skill. This is a learned behavior. How do you bounce back after hearing something like that? What is the self-talk? What is the skill set you pull on then to negotiate back to your due north, back to your core values, back to your voice, your strength, your power? What does that look like to readjust and dare to come back?
And I'm going to tell you, I will be truthful, 100% truthful. It took months for me to bounce back, even though I was telling myself, girl, you don't need this. You need to walk away from this. You don't listen to them. Don't do that. It took months for me to believe it. I was saying it, but I wasn't believing it. And
there is such a difference.
Yep.
There is such a difference. And when your heart and your mind are aligned. I'm sorry, go ahead. You kind of sparked something with that one.
I'm going to tell you, it wasn't until my husband threw my words in my face.
Really now?
My husband threw my words in my face. He said to me, you having all of these events with these women. Are you listening to yourself? Wow. You need to hear and listen to what you tell these women every day and get up and walk out of there. And I cried like a baby.
Look,
and then I picked myself up and I walked out of there. And that was the beginning of me starting over, and I didn't go back into corporate America again.
So being the first partaker of your own advice and your own self-talk, that leads me to PowHer. Love that interesting play on words. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's spelled POWH, capital HER, PowHer Consulting. Was this now the genesis of that?
Yes.
Owning your power and then translating that power to your clients. Tell us about your journey with your consulting.
Yes. And so PowHer actually, it started with my women's foundation. I used that word in the foundation because that meant we were helping her achieve whatever it is, whatever she wanted to do, we were going to empower her to do it.
I love that.
I took that word because that was what I was doing. I was empowering her. And at this time, her was me.
Yes.
To do it. And so PowHer Consulting, that is where I call myself a global culture strategist. And so we work with our clients to alleviate trust and communication issues through strategic planning and immersive learning opportunities. So I take all of these things that we were talking about, all of these issues, I create scenarios and I put them in it. All of my life.
Take us there. But take us there. Tell us about one of those opportunities. And I figured we're going to run out of time. We're literally down to 5 minutes. Take us, though, into one of those opportunities where you were working with a client and you helped them to really immerse themselves in their own genius and power. Tell us about an experience.
So I was working with the client and they thought we're just having an issue because of George Floyd. There's tense problems. No one's talking because there's some, everyone watched everything a year ago and everybody's in their feelings. We started to unpack that thing. I started to show them, some issues, some videos about microaggressions, and we started to share what that felt like. I even showed them a video about from an episode of Blackish. As it turns out, they had trust issues long before George Floyd.
Yes. Wow.
And they were not talking because they couldn't stand each other. It had nothing to do with George Floyd. And so when it was all said and done and they finished my program, which is a 6-session intensive, that team now thrives. That team works together. That team, actually kind of hangs out a little bit more. But they thought it was one thing. But when you start to unpack it, there's a lot under there. It's easy to blame diversity, but under there is trust.
Oh, that's good. So this is the work that you do, and I find it interesting that you're doing it in corporate. Corporate is so full of masking. There are so many masks in corporate, and we're finding that there's a breakdown economically, with promotions, with leadership, with communication, because folks are wearing masks. They don't know how to traverse the trust issues. And it's just not dealt with because corporate culture, I don't think, is given space for people to show up authentically, even in leadership, to deal with these issues, either internally or externally, get to the root of it, to really help the people who are in the systems, in the logistics. These are people. And I find it interesting that you're doing this kind of work in such a pretentious environment and getting these results.
Yeah. I mean, what I tell them is we use that word ally. And allyship is a trusted relationship. And if you can't get there, you're never going to get to allyship. So throw that out the vocabulary if you're not ready to start talking about trust.
Tell us about what you're doing now. I understand you have a huge retreat that's coming up, and it's going to be, if it's anything like this conversation, it will be intense, but absolutely worth it. Tell us about the work you're doing one-on-one in your retreats.
Okay, so the retreat is called the Her Way Retreat, and it is focused on the Black female executive. The one space that I've always wanted to work with and never had a chance. And I felt like if there was never a time to focus on the Black female executive, it would be now. Because one, we're in demand, but we've always been ready. We've always been qualified, but all of a sudden we're in demand. The world is on our shoulders and we're exhausted, and for so many reasons.
Yes.
And there hasn't been a place for us to release and talk professionally, but candid and open, like we're having this conversation openly and candidly, but also have that release, also have the self-care, all of these things. And so I wanted to do something for those women. So having the opportunity to have a retreat, an exclusive retreat. So it's for 10 executives. So we're kind of being real picky about these ladies who are coming, but luxury, high luxury, and having great speakers, have Minda Harts, who wrote the memo, coming to do this candid conversation, this fireside chat, having the self-care piece of it, having the money talk, having all of these different parts come together intimately for these ladies. So when they walk out of there, they've gotten the professional development. They've gotten the open conversations. They've gotten the self-care. They've also gotten the spa treatments. So they feel like somebody's seen them, not just because they're Black, but because they deserve it. They deserve that care.
Love
and
that.
They deserve to be seen in that way.
How do people connect with you and your community?
So many ways. Of course, if they want to connect with me, for the Chapman Women's Foundation, and this, of course, that retreat is, a joint effort with the PowHer Consulting and the Chapman Women's Foundation. They can find me on, Instagram, at PowHerful, of course, and through Shantira Chapman. So I have both of those. The Her Way Retreat now has a Instagram page, and then also on Facebook, the Chapman Women's Foundation and Shantira Chapman, and then LinkedIn.
Love that. You are such, again, a profound and powerful leader. I want to continue the conversation with you. I do sense that there is a part two. I really do want to get into the spiritual, psychological, and emotional aspects of all of this, because we don't really understand the toll historically and how we bring that history with us, even sometimes subconsciously. We bring that with us, and how to work through that to really be aligned, to show up to be our best selves, and what that looks like in the buzzwords of inclusion and diversity, what that really looks like for us. That's a conversation, my dear, we need to have very quickly, and I promise you, I'm going to have you back for it. You, again, you never disappoint. Thank you again for being my guest today. I've enjoyed our conversation, hearing more of your background, your thoughts, your history. Some of it I knew, some of it I didn't know. Absolutely refreshing. You are a delight, and I'm so glad you're in our market, you're in our space, and we get the opportunity to see the great things you're doing here in the city and literally around the world. So thank you again for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. I just loved having this conversation, and I will do part two whenever you want me to.
Absolutely. Consider that an open invitation. That's coming soon. So thank you for being with me. Thank all of you for joining in. Again, literally here in Houston, the U.S., and around the world. You join in on these conversations. You connect with the community. You let us know what you want to hear. Continue to do that. We want to bring you interviews and media that make sense to you and make your life absolutely better. So thank you again for supporting this conversation. We'll be streaming live soon on the JD3 TV network. Really excited about that. The launch is coming soon. In the meantime, make sure you connect with us on our fan page on Facebook, Master Your Morning with Miss Mogul. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mogul Life TV, and our websites, YouCanCreateYourOwnEconomy.com and MommiesCreatingEconomies.com. We're doing some very similar work. We're really empowering women to be their best selves, whether economically, spiritually, socially, wherever you are, to show up powerfully, right? And show up completely and authentically. This is your time. This is your moment. And I'm glad to be here with you in it. So kudos to you. Thank you all again for tuning in. Thank you to my new engineer there in the back. We'll be back for another segment on next week. Goodbye for now.